Over the last few days, there has been a lot of talk and conversation of the reasons behind, I would say, the infrastructural collapse Bengaluru witnessed due to very heavy rains. Roads turned into rivers, villas had indoor swimming pools in them which they hadn't really planned for, and there were techies traveling by tractor. So great headlines for news, and a lot of back and forth politicking about why this was the situation. By now, it's no mystery that overdevelopment has reached this stage in Bengaluru that we had a kind of a disaster taking place. You're also going to have heavier rains every year. We had an interesting sort of a solution and a thought on it, which was put out by Zerodha co-founder and CEO Nithin Kamath in a tweet thread last week, where he talked about companies moving their employees to work remotely if they could. And that seemed more solution-oriented rather than just talking about what went wrong. So we invited Nithin on the show today to ask him to speak more about that idea. Nithin Kamath, founder and CEO of Zerodha, speaking with us today. Nithin, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining in. And if you can elaborate on the thought you put out, you basically talked about how since the pandemic, 50% of your employees have moved to smaller cities and towns, and how that has really helped their work-life balance. What has it meant for productivity and for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, firstly, I think, most large cities in India are kind of beyond choking point. I mean, we've taken over lakes, we've taken over, and built houses on top of it. So, if there are rains, there will be floods. And if there are no rains, there will be water problems in terms of scarcity of water. So really the long-term solution, I think, is to see if we can, distribute all this work from smaller towns and cities. And in the process also, kind of help create economies in those smaller towns and cities. And I think the biggest blessing in disguise with COVID was this whole fact that you can actually work remote, at least for majority of the team. So in our business, all the support functions who don't really have to be at the office all the time. I mean, we've kind of almost nudged them to say, why don't you go to smaller towns and cities? You'll have more bang for your buck. 1 lakh rupees in Bangalore versus 1 lakh rupees in, say, Mysore is very different. People can save more, they can have a better quality of life. And even in terms of productivity, I think we have not seen any drop. If anything, it's just gone up. We've actually had to take a step saying we're going to disable all work chats and work conversation at 6 p.m. Because the big issue with work from home is the divide between work and personal life goes away. And I think the first few months of work from home, that was a challenge, personally, me as well, the team. So, and then we took a call saying, 6:30 p.m. The work is done and no one's going to bother anyone for work chats and stuff like that. So I mean, there have been learnings.
No, but Nithin, someone would say that you're the exception rather than the rule. A lot of big voices from India Inc. have been saying enough of this work from home, come to office, or here's the exit door. So you have that voice as well. And, you could say that those are more traditional industries, but then that's the bulk of employment and office space today in the country. So coming back to the bigger issue that you're talking about, our cities are choking, there's too much development, and a lot of migration into cities is around work. People are coming into big cities to essentially make a living, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's the thing that we need to, I think, kind of change, right? Because all the money is in the big cities, right? The economies, I mean, if all the money is in the big cities, people will naturally come to big cities to make money, and there is no going around it. So we need to find ways to, create economies in smaller towns and cities. You don't need like a lot of small towns and cities. I mean, if there were, say, 50 cities in India that could take the load of the top 5-10 cities of the country, I mean, I think it'll just take the burden off the larger cities, and it's good for the overall country as well, right? Because as a country, we are struggling to create livelihood for the bottom 50-60% of the population. Now, you can't expect all of them to migrate to cities. So now you can potentially in that way kind of take jobs back to where they are. And this is also, in a way good for climate change, etc. Because, people who live in smaller towns and cities have lower carbon footprint. If you consume locally, all the footprint of, sending food from one place to other, all of that, not just food, everything, right? As in, if you can consume locally, you're not just helping the local economy, but you're also going to have a lot lesser carbon footprint as a person. But it is, as I said, I don't think the transition is going to be easy, but there is no way around this. As in, how long? How much more can Bangalore or Bombay or Hyderabad? How much more can they grow? As in, eventually, people will be forced to do it. But I think it's better to do it proactively than being forced to do it. As in, so it's not possible for all kind of industries, all kind of businesses to do this. But I think wherever the opportunity is, people should do it. As in, I don't see not every business can, of course, ask people to work from home. Maybe set up satellite offices. Maybe it is an upfront investment that the business has to make. But that's going to, I think, personally, I think that's going to have long-term payoffs, because if given the unpredictability of, whatever is happening because of climate change, a distributed workforce working out of smaller towns and cities is even good for the business long-term. People have to just think long-term versus kind of optimizing for short-term.
The address of your business also has perceptional advantages. So, when I was going through your tweet thread, the thought that came to mind is, suppose there is a new company that wants to start. If you have to start another Zerodha today or another company today, do you not want a Bengaluru address? Would you be willing to start a new enterprise in a Belgavi or in another city? Because the networking, the ability to grow that business also depends on the location of that business, isn't it? It's a whole ecosystem.
Yeah, see, the thing is, we started broking in 2010 in Bangalore. And, the first question everyone asked me was, dude, what are you doing in Bangalore? So
that is true. That is true. So, you have a fair point. You didn't come to Mumbai.
Yeah, so, for a long time, people kept thinking that we are somehow Mumbai based. We are, no, I think it's just a perception. I think there's talent across the country, right? As in, but it's very hard to be working remotely as a startup, because, you're building culture and all of that. So it's very hard to build that culture remotely. So what I'm saying is not that, every person starting off should go and start off in a smaller town city. So the thing here is businesses that have grown, which employ the most number of people, right? Because in essence, startups aren't really the biggest employers in the country, right? They're among the smallest. So I think it's about the well-established business who have deep enough pockets to kind of invest. These are the kind of people who need to be taking action. I'm not expecting startups to be taking action, because it's, there's already so much volatility in your life and your business, when you're starting off, and you don't want to add another risk point by going to a location where finding talent is harder, right? So, but I think the larger companies, I think should start, doing more is what I feel.
You're right that maybe not just companies. If we really want to move this in a real way, I think your governments will have to come in as well. Don't you think so? Some kind of policy support will be required to incentivize companies to set up in other cities, in satellite towns and cities, and develop satellite towns and cities. Isn't infrastructure the big key as well? If you want to build a business, you want that kind of a internet connection, you want that kind of stability of electricity, and all of that to go with it.
Yeah, no, I think this is really if you think about it 10 years from now, really, that's really the only outcome, right? As in, like I said, eventually everyone will follow through with this. As in, I can't, I've been thinking about this quite hard, saying what can Bangalore do, or what can Hyderabad do, or whatever, right? As in, what can they do right now correctly that can ensure, that it won't choke in 10 years from now. As in, if you're kind of, if you factor in all the new migration that's going to keep happening every year, it's very hard to figure. Of course, you can have better public transport, you can have better roads, etc. But the world is changing. Climate change is affecting in ways that we don't know. Like this year it could be floods, next year it could be drought. So what happens to drinking water next year if there is drought in Bangalore, right? It is because until last year, what we were told is a few weeks, like one year of no rainfall, and then drinking water is a problem in Bangalore. So like I said, I think climate change is the biggest problem for this planet, and the way to solve for it is to kind of not keep people concentrated, distribute them, make them consume locally, create smaller sustainable kind of ecosystems versus trying to put everyone together in one place. So I think eventually policy decisions also will go towards the same direction as well.
You are working on this as well. In your tweet thread, you talk about Rain Matters, a foundation that you've been involved in. Do you want to tell us a little more about it?
Yeah, I mean, so we set up this foundation, as we did well as a business, we kind of realized that, we need to do a lot more to give back and etc. And the two causes that were really close to heart was one around climate change and one around creation of livelihood. Uh, so I think two of the biggest problems for the country, and we kind of believe that in India, probably the answer to both the problems kind of lie in each other, which is if you can create local consuming sustainable economies, that is, like if I am in say Mysore, I'm not ordering food from Bombay. I'm consuming, like food from around Mysore. So you're creating livelihood around Mysore. Then you're also creating, your carbon footprint becomes lesser. So you're for the climate as also you're doing better. So yeah, so we're supporting a bunch of nonprofits who are trying to work on this cause, which is, help create, nurture, local like ecosystems, sustainable ecosystems in smaller towns, villages, and cities.
Nithin, if I let you go without asking you about the markets, I think my viewers will hate me. I will get trolled. So I'm not going to take that risk. No, but on a serious note, it's been a better run than expected over the last few days. India seems to have sort of left the worst behind us in terms of economic flux, inflation still hovering on the horizon, but the markets seem to have factored all of that in. Would you say that the outlook is at least turning positive for now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a very extremely painful bull market rally of sorts, in the last few months, right? And we've been very resilient. I've said this before, that there's a lot of demand and interest for India, not just locally but internationally as well. I think as a nation, I think we're one of the last few democracies with a stable government, growing fast, etc. So there's a lot of demand, and also I think given all the regulatory changes over the last few years, the leverages in the ecosystem has reduced significantly. That means that when markets go down, when international markets have been going down, we've gone lesser because there is no leverage being unwound. Right, as in, because usually what happens in stock markets is when the market suddenly falls 10%, 15%, like, all leverage position are forced exited. And then that leverage positions being exited kind of, creates like a snowball effect and, makes that a 20, 30% drawdown. Now, without this leverage being unwound, what we've seen is, we haven't fallen as much when others have fallen. So which meant that, when others have bounced back, we've bounced back, and we've actually, in terms of relative outperformance compared to other markets, I can't really recall when historically we've outperformed as much as we have in the last 6 months or so. And so I'm, I've been like historically in the last 1 year or so, generally been very pessimistic about the world, but I've stuck to the stance that India will probably continue to outperform other economies of sorts.
But what is the basis of that optimism, Nithin? Because obviously it's fashionable now to say that, you're betting big on India, everyone's betting large on India. But apart from all of the patriotism fueling it, what are the fundamentals that you see are setting us apart? The fact is that we're living in greater global uncertainty. We continue to be very dependent on imports. And energy imports are beginning to cost more and more. There are fears of a global recession. Why do you think we'll be better off?
Yeah, see, the thing is, the world has kind of moved to valuing companies and economies based on growth, right? I mean, this whole price to earnings and and I mean, these were things that worked maybe 10, 20 years before, right? If you look at how companies are valued today, is just based on future potential growth, and the future potential growth of companies in India, because India is one of the like fastest growing countries in the world, is more than every other country. So there is a lot of demand for Indian stocks, and Indian markets are, to be very honest, is not, it is quite shallow. As in, while we have, participation is quite a bit, but it isn't easy to buy a lot of stocks or sell a lot of stocks. So it is, if no one is selling stocks, markets don't fall as such. And when people want to buy stocks, it can go up quite a bit as well. So I think the optimism is in the fact that India is growing much faster than everyone else, and everyone else has money, so they have to find a way to park money somewhere. So India, I think there is no other option right now. I mean, if you are investing globally, I think you cannot miss out on investing in India, and I think that's really where all the interest in our outperformance is coming from.
I think the big trend post-pandemic was the rise of the Indian retail investor, and that is something which pushed Zerodha as well to new heights. Do you think that trend has persevered? Those investors have stuck on, and people are realizing more and more that the only way to beat high inflations is coming at 7% today is to be invested in markets.
Yeah, I think there's been a phenomenal kind of change in behavior, as in over the last 2 years. But that, the bullishness that we saw end of last year, early this year, it's not as much now, and it's kind of tapered off. There was a dip, and then it's kind of bounced back for the last 4 to 6 weeks again. So at least at Zerodha, because I think because we charge an account opening fees and etc. So we get a more serious kind of investor, and there's continued interest. So the active number of users on the platform has remained the same over the last 6-8 months, and so I think it is good. What will be interesting to see is how this this crowd behaves when the markets has like a 10-20% kind of a drawdown, right? Because we didn't really have a drawdown and stay there, right? So usually you tend to get to see retail behavior when there is a drawdown, and the drawdown is kind of prolonged. Because there was, it was not prolonged, we didn't really see like a large dip in activity of sorts. Of course, new account openings took like 25-30% drop, and then it's kind of on the way back up right now. But in terms of existing user activity, it was a little weak for a few weeks, but then it kind of bounced back along with the markets.
All right, so retail investors are sticking around for now. I'll let you go, Nithin, but thank you so much. Always a pleasure to speak with you.
Thanks, Tamanna. Bye.